What is up, guys? It is DMG here, and today we are going to be looking at our starter squad for the Premier League. Now, as I'm sure you guys know, the Premier League for starter squads and for players in general tends to be more expensive than other leagues, especially leagues that are not in the top 5 leagues. So, Germany, Spain, France, etc. Now, there is reason for this. Obviously, the Premier League is one of the more popular, if not the most popular league in the world. And along with that, they also have some great depth to start out with and some great players to eventually upgrade to. So it's no wonder why that the Premier League has more expensive players, and the players are just more expensive in general compared to other leagues. So when you are beginning your starter squad, make sure to remember that some of these players are going to be more expensive, and it may be better to look in other leagues and other areas first. But if you happen to get lucky, if you open some packs and you do happen to get some decent Premier League players, then I think it would be worth it to build around. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe. That's going to help me out tremendously. And with only a few days left until FIFA 21, we're going to have some really good momentum. So similar to what we did for other league squad builders, we're going to go position by position, see what the depth is, see what we can eventually upgrade to a few months in. Now, as I mentioned, the Premier League has some fantastic players to eventually upgrade to in nearly every single spot, and left wing is no different. Mane, Sterling, Son, Rashford, Bergwijn, Zaha. I mean, even Zaha and Bergwijn are not going to be crazy expensive because they are only 83 rated. In terms of starter wingers, you do have a handful from multiple teams and nationalities as well. You do have Pulisic, Felipe Anderson, Diego Jota, Saint Maximin, who was obviously overpowered as hell from last year. Even Nathan Redmond or Barnes and even Bernard look decent. Trossard actually looks decent as well. If I had to go with one of these guys, I would most likely either go with Trossard or Daniel Podence. Now, Podence obviously has horrible shooting. You would need a dead eye on him. But personally, I do like Trossard, and looking at his in-game stats, 4.4, high medium work rate, so that's good. His pace is decent. There's maybe not the fastest in terms of sprint speed, but I think his dribbling is good. His shooting is overall decent. Personally, I would either put an engine on him to increase his pace, dribbling, and passing. Maybe a hunter to increase the pace in the shooting. But overall, I think it's a very solid card and 4-star, 4-star. Next up, we're at striker. Again, plenty of players to eventually upgrade to. Aguero, Kane, although Kane's not the fastest, you may have to wait for a few informs or team of the season for that. Aubameyang, Vardy, Werner, Martial, obviously all great players. Gabriel Jesus as well. In terms of starting options, there are a few good ones. Richarlison, although he might be somewhat more expensive because of his 5-star weak foot. Calvert-Lewin actually is probably one of my favorites. I would say him or Callum Wilson. But in terms of other players, you do have Antonio, who is fantastic. Origi, I mentioned in previous videos before that. So you do have a lot of good options here. Personally, I'm going to go with Antonio, and looking at his in-game stats, yes, he doesn't have that great of a weak foot, but he does have 4-star skills, tremendous physical, great pace as well. Personally, I would put a sniper on him to increase his dribbling and shooting. His finishing would go to 90. His dribbling, actual dribbling stat would go to 89. So personally, for me, Antonio is the one to get. Now on to right wing. Again, great players to eventually upgrade to. Salah, Bernardo Silva, Mahrez even. Lucas Moura and Bale are probably going to be a little bit more expensive, being 83 overall, which I know isn't the highest. But again, they're great players, so I do expect them to be pretty expensive. You do have some other good wingers. Willian, Pepe, Ferran Torres isn't even that bad. Adama Traore is probably going to be expensive. Under is honestly probably one of my favorites, I would say, from this right mid position. And looking at some other players, Greenwood might be a little bit more expensive, although he is a right mid rather than a striker, so that may help you out. You have Daniel James, who's incredibly fast. Minamino, who is obviously a very good card as well, with great pace, good dribbling. In my opinion, it just depends on who you want between Under and Minamino here, and obviously it just depends on who you want in general. But Minamino is going to be a little bit faster, maybe a little bit better dribbling wise. Under, a little bit better shooting and passing wise. So again, it just depends on what formation you run, what your tactics and instructions are, but in my opinion is between those two guys. Moving on to the midfield, probably one of the better areas in the Premier League, specifically just because there is a tremendous amount of talent here. KDB, Conte, Fabinho, Bruno Fernandes, Pogba, you got Ziyech here, Wijnaldum, Havertz, Ndidi, Allen, Van de Beek, literally countless players that you can eventually upgrade to that are all going to be very good players for you. For players who could be in your starter squad, again, there's going to be some great depth and talent as well. Kovacic is going to be good. Lo Celso, I've mentioned before. Fred could potentially be good. James Madison. Souček, I think, is going to be decent for a defensive mid. Maybe not the fastest, but 68 pace is not, horrible by any means, and he is more of a physical presence as well. You also have Sander Berg here. You have Oxlade-Chamberlain, Sissoko, Doucouré, Guberman here, Almiron. Honestly, Almiron might be a very good player to have. In fact, we're just going to add him straight away into here. Because we went with Almiron, who's obviously more of an attacker, we're going to see if we can find a box-to-box and then a more defensive-minded player. Mbaman here, or Guberman, however you pronounce it, I think is probably going to be my defensive mid of choice. Very good all-around defensive mid stats. Obviously, you don't want him going forward because of his shooting, but good pace, good enough passing, dribbling for defensive mid, and then good defending and good physical as well. You will also have a little bit more higher rated, most likely more expensive players with Fred and Lo Celso. Me personally, I would either go with Fred or Oxlade-Chamberlain, just for a box-to-box midfielder, just depending on who you want. I'm going to go with Fred here. He is a little bit more expensive, but I think he is going to be worth it. Moving on to the left back spot, and now left back actually used to be a little bit weak for the Premier League in previous FIFAs. Now we have Robertson to upgrade to, Digne if you want, Regulian also just transferred to Spurs, so that's a very good option there. In terms of players you want to start with, I don't think Mendy is the worst, although he may still have high-low work rates. I don't think Shaw is the worst either. Everson's not bad. I think Tierney, from what I'm seeing right now, is most likely going to be the best. I mean, you do have Masuaku, you do have Van Aanholt, so some of the lower players are actually probably going to be the best. So between Tierney here, Van Aanholt, Masuaku, it's really your choice. Personally, I'm just going to go with Tierney because of his high work rates. Next up, we have center back. Now, this is probably one of the weaker spots of the Premier League because there's not really a whole lot of great players to eventually upgrade to, besides obviously Van Dijk. But besides that, Laporte is not necessarily the fastest. Alderweireld is not that great. Fernandinho is not fast, and he is also pretty small. Matip is not the fastest. And then after that, you actually have obviously not super low rated players, but not anyone that's top tier like Van Dijk. So Gomez, he's going to be very expensive to start out with, but someone who's good. Rudiger, Sanchez are in the same boat, very good to start out with. Lindelof, even Jones isn't that bad. Soyuncu is not that bad. Zuma isn't even that bad either. Bai's good. Ake is good. Smalling is good. Den Donkers is not that bad either. So there are some good starting options that you can go with at center back. It's just eventually upgrading that you're not really going to have a lot of great options besides Van Dijk, obviously. So when you are doing that, keep that in mind. But in terms of just center backs I want to go with, I think Bailly is going to be a good option. Someone who's relatively low rated and I think should be relatively cheap. And then someone else I'm going to go with Davinson Sanchez. So same pace. Davinson Sanchez is going to be a little bit better defending and physical. For me, that's probably my starter center backs. Again, there are some other options that are a little bit more higher rated, such as Joe Gomez and a couple other 82s and 83s. But in terms of eventual upgrades, there isn't a whole lot besides Van Dijk. Right back spot, and this one is actually very strong, I would say. You do have Kyle Walker, Trent to eventually upgrade to, Ricardo Pereira, who's very good, Wan-Bissaka, 83 overall, João Cancelo, Nelson Semedo. So very good options to eventually go to. In terms of starting options, Aurier is not necessarily the worst. I think there are players who are much worse than him. I don't think he's that bad. Bellerin, not the fastest anymore, but I do think that he's a good starting option. There's Yedlin, there's Fredericks. If you do want a little bit more pace, there's Reece James as well. Chelsea, so good team, and then English, so again, obviously you can link with some good players there. Even Baldic is honestly not that bad. He's not, amazing, but 79 pace isn't bad. Dribbling, defending, physical is not bad. So if you can't really go with any of these other options that are probably better, you also have this fallback of Baldic here. Personally, I'm just going to choose Yedlin, but again, there are a plethora of different options that you can go with. Lastly, we have the goalkeeper spot, and goalies essentially in most of the top 5 leagues are going to be very deep, and typically they're also going to have some good starter options, and the Premier League is not really any different. Alisson, Ederson, Lloris, De Gea, Leno, Schmeichel, Rui Patricio, Dubravka, Pope. I mean, all good options there to eventually upgrade to. Areola is one that I've seen that a lot of people are wanting to have because he has Good options in terms of links, obviously Premier League and then French. So he's probably going to be a little bit more expensive. But in terms of starting options, Emiliano Martinez isn't that bad. Guaita, Henderson, Fabianski are not bad either. Even Karius isn't that horrible. Personally, again, you can really go with whoever you want here. Goalies are, essentially you just want the highest rated goalie eventually. So that's kind of what you need. But it really just depends on what you need for links, unless obviously you're going full Premier League. Then it doesn't really matter. So me personally, I'm just going to go with Guaita here. 80 overall, good team. And that is going to complete our Premier League starter squad. So I do think this team could actually do fairly well. It's pretty versatile. You could go in a 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1 narrow. In fact, if you were to replace Under with Minamino, which is what I'm going to do real quick. So in a 4-4-2, the back line is obviously going to be staying the same. You have Fred and Kabam in here in the center mid spot. You have Almiron, Minamino out on the wings, and then you have Antonio and Trossard at striker. Antonio, in my opinion, is going to be the one getting forward, getting in behind. Trossard is going to be that false 9 target man striker. So again, you also have the 4-2-3-1. So, Kabam and Fred, defensive mids, Almiron, Minamino wings, Trossard, Cam, and Antonio at striker. I think if you have the correct chem styles as well, you can make this team very good. But keep in mind, this may not be as strong as a team from the Bundesliga, a team from La Liga, mainly because you may have to go a little bit cheaper because it's the Premier League. Premier League players are going to be just more expensive than other players, essentially. And that's just how it is, even if it is going to be the same rating and same in-game stats. But if you are set on Premier League, or if you do manage to get lucky and pack some good Premier League players or some Premier League All-Star, then in my opinion, this is probably something to build around because you have the right stats, you have the right players to go 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, anything with a 2 defensive mid or 2 center mid set. So that is going to do it for this video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it and now you have some ideas for what you want to do in your Premier League team. But like I said, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been DMG. Peace.